He inspired us to think about freedom, freedom for all people. He inspired us to visualize freedom, freedom in every land. He inspired us to fight for freedom, freedom to stand up as one. He inspired us to be free, free as all God's children. Let freedom ring as we bring the good news to the poor. Let freedom ring as we love our neighbors as ourselves. Let freedom ring, for sin has no dominion over us. Let freedom ring, for we are saved by grace. Let freedom ring, for Christ has set us free. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. This is our hope. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together as all God's children from every state and every city to join hands and sing, "Free at last." We thank God we are free at last.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. We are excited about tonight, and we want to wish you a very happy King holiday. As we, the branch of the Austin Merchant NAACP, want to come together today to have our discussion Beyond the Dream, a virtual One of the King community discussion sponsored by the Religious Affairs Committee of our branch. And so excited to be here on today. My name is Sean Jones. I'm the pastor of Star Bethlehem and our Religious Affairs Director for the Austin branch. And so welcome to our program on tonight. We've had to shift virtually due to the snow, but we're grateful and thankful for all of you all who are watching live with us on this evening. As you are logging in, I want you to help us out. I want you to like, heart, and share today's video, today's discussion. Also, if you're watching online, be so kind, drop your name in the chat. We want to have a conversation. We want you to be part of that conversation. Let us know that you're watching, what's your name, where you're watching from, as we begin this amazing discussion with persons from across our region who will help us to understand not just Dr. King's dream, because he did more have a dream. I'm talking about his legacy and what that means for us on today. I'm going to start by scripture by one of our branch members, Cheryl Haskins, and then we will go from there.
Good evening, everyone. I'm reading from Amos chapter 5, scripture 24. But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never falling stream. May God add a blessing to this reading.
Amen. Thank you. And we want to hear from our branch president, Mr. Harry Campbell.
So I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Pastor Jones, Star Bethlehem, and the Religious Affairs Committee for all of the hard work that they did in putting this together. I know it wasn't easy. And as he said, we had to make some pivots because we were blessed with some snow. But the Austin branch of the NAACP welcomes everyone who is attending, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. President, an opportunity for me to serve in this capacity on tonight. As we begin our panel discussion on tonight, we have some amazing panelists who are going to come and going to share with us. And so I'm going to bring our panelists up as we're going to introduce them, as well as give some guidelines for our conversation on tonight. And so I want to make sure that all who are on the panel are up and ready to go. I think we've got everybody up on tonight. As we begin this conversation tonight, know that this conversation isn't just about remembering Dr. King. It's about continuing his work. We're joined tonight by leaders, represent areas of advocacy, policy, education, and community organizing. Each bring a unique lens, a unique perspective of what it means to live beyond the dream. And so want to welcome our panelists on today, even those who are online. If you can help us applaud our panelists for being here on tonight. Many of them were driving one way and had to go back home and change up. And so we're so grateful that no one slid home. We got home safely, able to be a part of this conversation. Want to give you some rules on tonight, or some guidelines, I should say, on how we'll have our discussion before we introduce our panelists officially. We're gonna ask each panelist a series of questions. Again, to honor our time, they've already heard this. We're asking for every panelist to offer 2-minute responses per question. Keep us moving so we can cover as much ground as possible. Panelists will be able to respond back and forth to one another, of course. And as we have our discussion, of course, we want to have a respectful, honest conversation. So there may be times that we agree or disagree with each other. We always want to have respect for one another in our conversation. We're not here to perform, but we're here to build. And so we want to provide some solution-centered conversations, naming problems, but also looking to how we can point toward action and solution with that. And so again, there may be a time I may jump in the conversation, guys, just for time's sake. But we want to hear from these amazing panelists on tonight. I want to introduce our panelists at this time. As I'm doing so, I see many of you are already logged in the chat, and so please make sure you're saying good evening, letting us know, and sharing with others, even through social media, if they want to join this conversation on today. It will definitely be a blessing to them and for all of us. And so I want to first please introduce Mr. Rob Abbott, who's an active member of the NAACP, our branch. He's a committed advocate for justice and equality in our community. We're honored also to welcome on tonight our historian, Joyce Chirac Cole, a trusted keeper of our community's history and a vital voice helping us to understand where we've been and where we must go as a community and as a people. Also help us welcome on tonight Miss Nicole Nikki Hines. She is the new appointed NAACP Regional Director for Mid-Hudson and Westchester area. She's been a leading voice for civil rights in Rockland for many years, and we are grateful that she is now lending her voice and her power to our entire region. So we welcome her on tonight. Also want to welcome the one and only Dr. Jaleesa McFarland, the founder and CEO of the Kendall Community Incorporated. She is a nonprofit that's committed to uplifting community through service, support, and empowerment. She recently received her EDD, and so I'm just super excited. She grew up at Star, but she's a grown woman doing grown things, and so we're excited to have her here with us on today. Want to please welcome Deputy Mayor Omar Lopez, who serves in our community as a fierce advocate. He's also the liaison for Austin's Police Reform / Relationship Committee. He served to strengthen our community through trust, accountability, and community partnership. And we thank him for joining us on tonight. Want to welcome also Mr. Martin McDonald, who for Austin, he is no stranger. He's a hero to many of our young people. He's a retired educator who has led different young men's movements and mentoring Austin schools, and now still does so through the Peak Skill branch at NAACP, as well as his own program, I think his Black Diamonds for our young men in that area. And so we thank him for his mentorship, for his voice, and for him being a part of tonight. And finally, least and not last, is our county executive, county legislator. Maybe that's future for later down the line.
Don't get me in trouble. Don't get me in trouble.
I know. Ken just called me a moment ago. She's a public servant focused on affordable housing and ensuring that our families have a fair shot at stability, dignity, and opportunity. And so, again, thank you all for receiving the call, heeding the call, and accepting the opportunity to be a part of tonight's panel and discussion. Again, for those in the comments, please make sure that you are commenting. I want to acknowledge on today Dana Levenberg, who is our New York State Senator, legislator, who is Assemblywoman, who is on tonight, as well as many others. And so we thank you all for being a part. We see you in the chat on tonight, and we will have time for you to share also on this evening. The theme for this panel is living beyond the dream. And so we're asking tonight the question, what does it look like to move from inspiration to implementation? And so we want to begin with that question on tonight. We'll ask the question actually to our historians first, Mr. Joyce Cole. If Dr. King were alive today, what do you believe he would be saying about this moment? And what would he challenge us to do differently?
Pastor, you're coming in and out.
Am I?
Yeah, we couldn't really hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about now? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Did y'all hear anything I just said?
Yes, it was a little muddled, but
A little
you can just
muffled.
repeat the question.
Okay. All right. We'll try this again. So here's the question. And this is first for Sister Joyce Cole, but for anyone else who also can chime in. If Dr. King were alive today, what do you think he would be saying about this moment in our country? And what would he challenge us to do differently?
So what I think first, he would be very disappointed that we made some strides forward and got thrown all the way back. It's like we dismantled everything, every step, every push forward, and it just came down like a wall. And what I think he would say today is he would challenge us to move the mantle forward, but we would have to pivot. Times are different, people are different, we're working with different structures. The message is still the same. He would say we still are fighting structural inequality. We still have economic issues. There's still poverty. There's still housing discrimination. So all of the things he was fighting for, we still have to pick up that mantle and move it forward. So unfortunately, we're not fighting for new things. We're fighting for these same things in a different way. So I think he would tell us still be nonviolent, because it takes a lot of discipline and it takes a lot of I tell my kids all the time, it takes a lot of smarts to be able to outwit your enemy when they're trying to be violent or invoke violence from you. It takes a lot of discipline to be nonviolent and to use your brain to effectively move forward.
You're muted, Pastor Jones.
Dr. McFarland, you want to chime in? Thank you for your response. Dr. Cole.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I completely agree. And to add, while we are maybe in a more difficult position because we know that there's change that can happen, right? We understand that we can move forward as a community. I feel that he would add that the ignorance is now an indifference. People know that there is racism going on. People know that there is major injustices, and they're choosing to remain ignorant. And while we should move forward in nonviolence, he definitely would feel, in my opinion, that we should stand tall with boycotting, that we should stand tall in making sure that we're fighting against these systems that want to praise capitalism in the way where we are having moral disparities.
No, great. Omar, you want to share, or Nikki? Anybody else?
Yeah, I kind of want to chime in on both of what they said. And, as Joyce had said, we have to be more strategic in how we're doing it, right? That this has all happened before. We just don't know it because we didn't live it. Now we're living it, right? And so we really have to be strategic on how we're moving. And also, we can't be quiet anymore. Right. There's no time in being quiet. This is a time where if we see something, we need to say something, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, even the kids now, they're like saying it on TikTok. They're doing all those things. We can't be scared anymore because, now with ICE coming out, right, hard and strong, we have to voice what is happening. We can't be silent anymore. Dr. King wasn't, right? And so we can't be.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Emiliana, please.
Thank you so much. I would love to add to agree with everything that was just said, and just to add to the ICE perspective as well. I think he would urge us to continue to build coalitions with other people who are oppressed, right, so that we can all fight back together. This is every year on his day, people love to find their favorite quotes of Dr. King, and one of my favorites is, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So I think in this moment, he would urge us to stand with those who are affected by this administration, even if we are not personally impacted. I think he would ask us to advocate for our immigrant community members who are being particularly targeted by the Trump administration, and to do it in a nonviolent way, in a way that incites empathy, to demand that ICE agents do everything by the book, to hold every single one of them accountable, right? it's not difficult to see the parallels between ICE violence against immigrant community members and law enforcement violence against Black Americans. So I think he would be urging us to join the pickets, to join the protests, and demand ICE accountability, and continue to build that big coalition so we can all fight back together.
No, I think great. Go ahead, Rob, and we'll move to the next question. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, I saw a comment in the chat, someone that was asking, how has the movement been thrown back?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that is something that we can't assume everybody understands. And we have to be able to make the arguments. Take, for example, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for that matter, affirmative action. Those are concepts and programs whose goals, they've been attacked because of the rhetoric is attacking the names of those things, but the goals are something that we still share. And we thought for a while that we had won that argument. Now that has been thrown back, we have to make those arguments again, as sort of frustrating as it is to have to step back like that. I think one of the things that Dr. King showed by his example was the importance of persistence and unity. And that's part of the work that we have to do. And Nikki mentioned that, you know, we do that by speaking out, and I'm second that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No,
Yeah,
definitely.
I definitely would like to say something, Reverend Jones.
Go ahead, Brother Martin.
A little different spin, I guess. What would Dr. King say about this moment? I think that he, in some regards, he would say, I told you so. I told you this was coming. I told you that if we didn't get it right now in this moment in the 60s, that it was going to be worse. We had an opportunity. We had some things that were going forward. But there's still the problems of racism, right? Still the problems of poverty. There's just a different day. And from the 60s to now, we made some gains, but King had his challenges with Bull Connor and George Wallace, and now we're dealing with the orange guy and his minions. But it's still there. But I think what he was arguing back then is that our greed, our materialism, our building up of our military might, spending more money there than in the communities to help people. That's what he was saying, that if we didn't get it right and if we didn't change that approach into supporting the people over the military, that it was going to be a problem. And so now we have a problem because they're still building up the military. Now more than ever, people are more materialistic than ever. And racism is just not a Black problem anymore.
No.
So he would say, I told you so. We needed to get it right and we didn't. Somewhere politicians or something, politics, something. The bounce check, right? We got a bounce check. We never got a chance to cash it.
No, and I appreciate your perspective and everybody's perspective. I think what you're saying, Brother McDonald, is very much on point because, and it's a question I was going to ask, but I think your comment has spoke to it. We live in a world where Dr. King's legacy has been very much sanitized. We act as if Dr. King, only thing he did, his last mark was the March on Washington. We forget that when he was killed, his poll numbers were extremely down because he was speaking about poverty. He was speaking about working workers, blue collar workers, sanitation workers. He was speaking about money and not just kumbaya moments, right? And so that shifted. And so I think when we talk about his legacy, we have to kind of recognize that his beyond this dream, this idea is not just one fold of walking together in unity, singing "We Shall Overcome," you know? And so, because overcoming is a consistent thing, as you all have been sharing. One of the things I want to pivot to, and it was mentioned in the comment a moment ago, and I think somebody else mentioned it earlier also, was that Dr. King preached nonviolence, yet we live in an era today of social media where we see violence against persons every day. There's viral outrage, there's consistent reaction, and we have TikTok and Instagram and Facebook social activists, but they never leave beyond the screen. And so my question is, and I want to pose this to Miss Nikki at first, is this. What does nonviolence look like now, not as passivity, but as power?
How did I know you were going to give me that question? I was like, oh no. No, not really. Well, I think, part of it is sharing what's right? Not giving disinformation on social media, right? And being disciplined on what we're sharing, right? I think we need to not, dehumanize language. We need to, really it's more about giving the real information. That's the nonviolence piece, right? We have to give we need to double check, triple check the information that we're giving. And it has to be disciplined. I can't think of any other way. Like, I need to speak to some young folks, and who's actually really doing the social media posts. I can't really talk on that. You picked the wrong person, Pastor Jones.
No, I got you. Dr. Lisa, not because you're the youngest person on the panel, I hate to do that to you. Just thoughts you might have. Also want to bring in Joyce, because as a historian, we're seeing the erasure of history, right, in many ways. And so just want to hear both of you all thoughts about that as well. Anybody else?
So when I think of the beloved community that Dr. King spoke about and how important it is to make sure that we're amplifying marginalized voices, I think that is one major aspect in making sure that we're moving forward. I think about the boycotts. I don't know how many years ago when everybody did the blackout Instagram. Because what we think is happening is that those that want ignorance is the larger population. But what we learn is that there's a lot of people out there that want to support and advocate for our brothers and sisters. And as long as we're pushing those voices forward, they become louder than those that are spewing hatred. And then we also need to recognize, you mentioned, Nikki, verifying misinformation, right? There's a lot of bots, which I did not recognize was an actual thing, from other countries that are creating hatred in America. Like, who would think? Well, I guess in this day and age, anything is possible. But there are other people in other countries that push forward racism and hate. So we need to make sure that we're calling them out, reporting things on Instagram. I do it all the time. If I see a hateful comment, block, report, dispute as much as possible, because that can really mess with someone, and it causes such separation when the goal is to make sure that we're canceling those voices.
No, that's great. That's great. Joyce, just from a historical standpoint, just love to hear your thoughts, because what we see on social media becomes truth, right?
Yeah.
Versus what is actual truth. I remember in Donald Trump's first term, he coined this phrase, alternative facts, right? Mm-hmm. And so now we've gone from alternative facts to just whoever's the loudest is now factual, and that's still not the case. So just want to hear your thoughts about it from an actual true historian.
So thank you. Dr. King was strategic in everything he did, and knowing history and drawing from it was part of his activism, how he structured what he was going to do. There's always power in knowing our history, knowing what happened before, and they know that. So they're telling us who we are, what to believe in. And if you're not well-versed in your history, you believe what someone's telling you. That's why historians are very important. The people controlling narrative are very powerful. If you're not seeing yourself inserted in the story, you start to feel bad about yourself. They know that. That's why when you talk of royals, lineage is everything. They know the power of knowing your past. If you're studying the civil rights era, you understand how the nonviolent lunch counter sit-ins, how powerful they were. And they were actually sitting down and had to take classes on how to sit there and be spat at, and how to be able to concentrate to be effective. Because it's easy to get up and to get into a brawl. But it's hard to sit there when someone's spitting in you because you want your message to be louder. So using social media You got 10 seconds to talk about history. You have 10 seconds to let people know about those sit-ins and how effective they are. So if we're pushing out good information of how to use what we used in the past with Dr. King to move ourselves forward, now we're starting to use social media as an engine for learning our past to bring it forward to help us in the future.
That's good. That's good. I want to pivot this conversation just for a brief moment to history and books and education, because you talk about knowing your history. I was privileged to go to an all-black Catholic school where literally we read the Black classics. I read Richard Wright. I read Zora Neale Hurston. Didn't read as much Shakespeare as I probably could have. Went to a historically Black college, so I was taught historical facts and values from a Black perspective. We live in a very diverse community, and we love Ossining and its diversity. But I'm just curious as to what Ms. McDonald, for you, Jaleesa, Omar, Miliana, and others about when it relates to making sure that history is not erased in our school systems, where our young people are learning and knowing. And I know that also, just Omar, Dana Levenberg gave you a great shout out about your role in social media, even with government. So whoever wants to chime in first with all these kind of thoughts would be great to do so.
I don't want to keep taking over the conversation, but in terms of school, I spend a lot of time in our school district. Every kid needs to see themselves in history. We have participated in everything. And when I say we, everybody here is part of the story. So I spend a lot of time in our school district sharing our past so we can understand where we are as a community. So it's very important to get the kids when they're young, that they see themselves represented. They see what they have contributed, because it is inspiring to them and it's empowering.
Yeah. And so whether it was through previous freedom schools that were part of our culture, where our young people were able to go to schools on Saturdays in churches and other places to learn those key things that they may not have been getting in the school system. Just, I think it's important of making sure that we understand the important the role of history plays. Brother Martin, if you can just chime in, I'd love to hear your thoughts about when it comes to history, our young people and those kind of things, because you work with our young men daily and giving their perspective as well.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend Jones. It's critically important. Critically important that the work that I do, anyway, and informing the kids, we're an academic success program, but it just can't be about academics. Academics are important, but it's the whole child, it's the whole picture, it's the whole perspective, it's everything. It's the development, it's the exposure, it's the different things that they're not going to get from school. If you ask, and I did ask, so I had a meeting today with my guys. And I asked about some of the things we're talking about today, just to get their feedback on what they think about Dr. King. And when you ask them, they say that they got a lot from Dr. King in the early grades. High school, not so much. It's not even mentioned. It's other than that, it's a holiday. So we have to have those conversations. And what they learned early on is sanitized. It's not the fire and firm Dr. King that I know, that I came to know after doing a little bit of research on my own and finding out, no, he was pretty forceful. He had some people around him. He had his deacons of defense were not a joke. They we need to let our kids know about the deacons of defense. Not everything was a kumbaya.
Right.
He was angry. He was a very angry man, and he didn't mind calling things out, and that's why he wasn't so popular. And we got to let our kids know that, no, he called out racism on both sides. Mm-hmm. He called out politicians on both sides, those that are in place that look like us that are not doing their job, and those that are supposed to be doing their job. Everybody's got to be held accountable, not just, and we got to understand, we got I do have an awesome responsibility and a duty in working with my guys. We recently had a case up in Peekskill, police brutality. And I had to go to the city council and say, so I'm here not just as a community leader or as a person that is a black man, but I speak to kids every week. What do you think I got to tell these kids about this? You can go home and other groups don't have to worry about they're carrying this baggage, seeing somebody getting brutalized by cops. No, we got to deal with that. We got to tell them the truth. We got to tell them when things are wrong. When I asked them today, just to go back a little bit about social media, I said, you know what does nonviolence look like to you on social media? They said, nonviolence. Well, I don't know about that, but ain't nobody going to hit me upside the head and I turn my cheek. They just don't have that type of discipline. They don't have that type of mettle to do that. So we're not playing the same game we were playing 50, 60 years ago. These kids are a little bit more volatile and not, I don't know for whatever reason, but the nonviolence, moving forward, nonviolence, I think they've seen enough. So, and it's up to us to try to channel that in a more constructive and productive way where they understand, this is the reality. We got to go back to back of the day. We got to work twice as hard. We got to work within ourselves. We got to work together before we got to clean us up before we can demand respect from everybody else. So that's what I focus on. We got to make sure our kids are strong in who they are culturally as men and as Black men. They got to be comfortable, and then we can go somewhere else with it.
No, I'll go ahead, Emiliana, then I see you come over here, Rob.
Thank you so much. So first, fully agree with our incredible village historian, Joyce Sherrill, who's done so much. Shout out to Assemblymember Dana Levenberg's comment here about all she's done to lift up the stories of Black families in Ossining and Westchester and unearth all of that history. And agree with Mr. McDonald as well about how important it is for our young kids and students to learn an unsanitized history. For me, I always think about things in practical steps. So like, what should we do? Then if that is an important goal for us, what do we need to do? Well, our school boards, our local school boards are the first step. If we want something included in textbooks, if we want something included as part of a curriculum, our local school boards are where those decisions are made about what is taught. So if you think a certain part of history or if you think a certain text is critical for young students to have a better context of why where we are, or a better understanding of our history, then you go advocate to that local school board, to your local school board. The other place is the state legislature. For example, right now, a Westchester state senator, Shelley Mayer, she represents a different part of Westchester. She has a bill to make sure that the January 6th insurrection is taught in local public schools. That is a bill that she introduced this year. Right. So there's a way to ensure that certain parts of our history are required to be taught. And we just have to know what those steps are, whether it's advocating to the local school board or advocating to our state legislators to introduce a bill to require a specific thing to get taught. And then continue, we have an incredible assembly member, Dana Levenberg, a great state senator, Pete Harcum, who represent Ossining and Peekskill, and they would be happy to, listen and hear from you about what you think is important to be included and advocate at the state level. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing some of the practical actionary steps, right, about how we can make some of these corrections and change. I want to hear from Rob for a moment. Rob, I know you had your hand up. You wanted to chime in also.
Just to build on what Emiliana said, to the extent that it's possible, we also need to support individual teachers because they I think feel like someone's looking over their shoulder. Mm-hmm. And that's probably not such an issue or a problem here in New York State, but nationwide, people are being censored. I mean, individual teachers, and there's some sort of self-censorship that probably takes place if they feel like there's not community support for keeping those things in the curriculum.
Oh, that's a good point. Nikki, Omar, someone said they want to hear from you. So I want to hear Omar's thoughts as well.
I loved what everyone said. I just wanted to include that, we want our children, our youth to know our history. And excuse my dog barking in the back. I'm so sorry. But also us, right? I'm talking about, I'll say us, I'm my age, right? 40 and a little under, and then 40 and up. Most of us don't know our history either. And so as much as we talk about the young folks, it's also us that don't know the history. And so we have to know it in order for our kids to know it. I also want to throw in, Mr. McDonald talked about the young men and teaching the young men about, nonviolence and the things that they have to go through. Young women, young Black women are going through the same exact things. And I can't not put that in the space, because we've seen plenty of times that, you know, young women have gone through police brutality and their names have not been said, that are being trafficked and they're not being said. So I want to, you know, I can't not throw young women in there either.
No, very much so. And I think to your point, we have to remember with our history that when it came to this fight for civil rights, it was young people at those counters. It was young people with the freedom rides. It was young people. John Lewis was older now, right before he passed away, but he was a young man then. Stokely Carmichael, Huey P. Newton. These guys were young people who were fighting that fight as students who had that youthful energy that's necessary for that. And I think it's important that we don't marginalize our young people to be on the sidelines, but give them their power, their strength, because they have the ability with cameras, with phones, with social media to bring things to light in ways that we would not be able to in many ways, because we may not be as comfortable with certain technology depending on where you are in your own space. Want to hear from Omar, and then we're going to switch gears.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Pastor Jones. So one of the things that I am struck by is the way that Dr. King used the technology of his time. At that time, writing letters, that was something that was a popular way of being able to get the message out there. And he wrote his letter from Birmingham jail on scraps of paper, was ultimately put together and then published in newspapers, and then put together and published in books and so forth. But that was one of the ways in which people consumed information. And he understood that and used that technology. If it was today, it might be Dr. King's Instagram reel from a Birmingham jail, right? He would use the technology that he has available. And that's really important, because although the algorithms that we are subjected to on a lot of these platforms mean that we all have a slightly different interpretation of the world, because it's all designed to try to keep you on the app and also get you to comment and so forth. And so the things that make you angry or upset get served up to you more than things that make you feel inspired. That's the nature of a lot of these algorithms. Nevertheless, we can use that technology. And coming from the perspective of a former middle school and high school English teacher, one of the things that I always knew that my students benefited from was the power of books, and specifically novels, because of the way that they were empathy builders. When you're reading a novel, you're reading the perspective of another person for an extended period of time. That is the opposite of a reel or something on TikTok, where it's happening for 15 or 30 seconds and you're only getting a glimpse. And so one of the things that we are charged with doing is what I hear so much of. But we want to not sanitize what was, right? And what does that mean? What does it mean to sanitize? It means that you take away all of the things that are dirty, grimy, unwanted, and so forth. And why is that important? Because I know this was my experience growing up. People like Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, they were almost deified. It was kind of an unreachable thing. These were people that did these amazing things, and that was then. And they're nothing like me. But the reality is, they were just like us, right? They were imperfect. They argued. They did things that were wrong, and that is okay, because that means that we also can move forward and do things to defend our community, stand up for the rights of our neighbors, even if we ourselves are not perfect.
No, thank you for that perspective. I think that was amazing, because he would go to certain communities knowing that there would be extra violence there. To heighten it, he made sure that there were newspaper writers and cameras there so that news could capture the unfortunate happenings of Bloody Sunday, of marches, of peaceful protesting that turned ugly as a result of violence by police dogs and fire hoses. Even the sanitized aspect of Rosa Parks was not the first woman to be arrested for boycotting. It was really Claudette Colvin, who was a pregnant young lady, right? But because they thought she would not look the part for the storyline, Rosa Parks, who was the secretary for the branch in NAACP, was somewhat chosen as a better perspective so that her story would go viral, right? And so we recognize how he used and how the movement, because it wasn't just him, he was the face of one of the organizations in the movement, but there were many persons who were doing this work behind the scenes as well as in up front as well. I do want to pivot a little bit because we're talking about fighting for what's right. We're talking about history. We're talking about really pushing narratives and with this advocacy that Emiliana mentioned about with our school systems and making sure what is being taught, what is being shared, who is in our classroom, who is not. But I want to ask the question about faithful resistance and being tired, because we live in a world now where people are just tired of fighting because it seems as if no matter what you do, you keep hitting yourself against a brick wall. I remember talking to Black women across this nation after the unfortunate fact that Kamala Harris was not elected as president. Just like, I need a moment. Like, I fought hard. I'm gonna come back, but right now, I need as a woman just to deal with what has happened. And so, I guess my question is for the panel: how do you speak to anybody, whether they're young or older, when they feel overwhelmed, exhausted, disconnected from the movement because the news is always something crazy? I can't fight Donald Trump every day. I can't fight the state legislature every day. I can't fight about police brutality every day. You know, I gotta do my laundry. You know, I need to go on vacation. And so, how do you speak to those persons who were saying, "I'm tired. I don't have the capacity"? So what does faithful resistance look like today, and what is sustainable and what's real with that? We'll go to Omar first, and then anybody else who wants to answer this question.
Yeah, I'd be happy to start us off. So, of course, I'm very biased, but I think that the answer is to start local. If you were to say, hey, let's start protesting the federal government, you know, what are we organizing a march on Washington? It's a large effort. But if you say, hey, I want to make my voice heard at a village meeting, the line is short. Wednesdays at 7:30, you show up, you'll be the first person there. There'll be no competition, and you'll have 2 to 5 minutes to speak your piece, and you can really get things going. And this is where you can make one of the biggest differences in getting funding for programs that you care about, in speaking up for injustices that you see locally. As a local elected official, I am highly influenced by my friends and neighbors that come to me in meetings, in email, in the supermarket, and say, hey, here's something that I saw that upset me. This isn't right. That's really influential. And all you need is 3 people out of 5 to get a local law passed on the board. And so if you want something that's going to refill your cup, look for ways to get involved locally, whether it's with local government or local organizations like the NAACP local chapter, in order to see how your efforts can really show results really quickly.
Joyce, now everybody, okay, go ahead, Joyce, and then Liliana. Anybody else? Yes.
I just want to attack the tired, because we all get tired, and it's exhausting. But I think the one thing we could draw from Dr. King's life is he didn't do it by himself. You need an entire village. So when you're tired, that you can take some rest, and somebody's going to pick that mantle up for you and push until you're able to jump back in the game. So we all get exhausted. And sometimes even locally, there's maybe 5 people that are always doing the thing, right? And you're one of the 5 people. But imagine if Dr. King got tired and he didn't keep pushing, where will we be? So we're allowed to get tired, and we are going to get tired. But when that mantle is on your life, you're going to get what you need to get there, and you can take rest, but you do have to realize nobody has ever done it alone. We were not designed that way.
Yeah. Very good. Emiliana?
Thank you. Fully co-sign everything Joyce just said. Absolutely right. We all get tired, and it's okay to take a break. Do what you need to do to fill your cup. Go see that person that makes you feel whole and gives you so much life. Do that activity that you love to do. I like to garden. I like my hands in the dirt. So I hate winter time because I can't do any gardening. But when I can, in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, an afternoon with my hands in the dirt makes me feel good again. The other thing that helps me keep going is I focus on the small wins along the way that we're able to get. Right, there's all these major struggles that we're trying to push for nationally. but I'm always paying close attention to what we're doing at the local level and at the statewide level, where we are making progress, right? Now in New York State, we have universal school meals, for example, free breakfast, free lunch for every student in every school district in the whole state, as done by the state legislator and our incredible champions like our Assembly Member Dana Levenberg, right? That's a huge difference from just 5 years ago when we didn't have that, when students would be shamed, right? Because they would be singled out in some way or another for qualifying for free or reduced lunch, and many weren't even going to ask for it because they would be too embarrassed to say that they qualified and to go get what they were entitled to. So we are making progress, right? That's just one example of making progress through building more housing, making progress by investing in this project or that project, things that are coming up, things that are in the pipeline, like we're going to get a pool at Croton Point Park, thanks to county government. These are, I like to take my joy in the small wins along the way, and that sort of fills my cup to keep going.
So what I hear you guys saying is that maybe we need to stop watching CNN as much and MSNBC and look at more local government, local area, because it is in the Patch or Loud or other news. We understand more what's happening locally, so we can be aware. Going to, I know Omar said Wednesdays at 7:30 to the courthouse. Thursdays is when you pay for your ticket. Wednesdays is when you go to address with our village and even our town, right? Councilpersons as well. I do recall. I've been here now. I can't believe it's been 10 years. It's been 10 years in June. I've been here this long. And when I forget the young man's name who was stabbed and killed, I think maybe about 7 years ago in Ossany, we brought together persons from the county, from the village, from the town to STAR to have a discussion about what can we do to really have some real youth services and youth programming, because young people just can't be on the stoop, can't just be on the street forever. They need something to do. As a result of that advocacy and that conversation, and it wasn't just one person, it wasn't just Pastor Jones, it wasn't just one person from, it wasn't just Melissa, it wasn't just MBK, it was all of us. And now we have a robust youth bureau that is paying young people to work, right, and finding jobs and careers and skill set. And so for Gregory Lopez, thank you, Omar. And so never forget his name. Of course, he has the park that you all honored him with off of Snowden. And so just making sure that we are advocating, because it is critical that we don't just jump to the major marches that was said earlier, but do the work locally. Jaleesa, I think you wanted to make a comment.
Yes, just a small one. And Linda Jones, if you get tired, learn to rest, not to quit. I think that is so important. Especially, I do everything through a wellness lens. I think it's very important that in order to continue the work, you have to make sure you're pouring into yourself as well. So it might not be that you're going to march on Washington tomorrow, right? It's just, if you're consistent, small steps are still steps. And it could be small things like taking care of your neighbor. It doesn't have to be a major movement. Small movements, there's a butterfly effect. And when you're paying it forward, it definitely pays to the larger program.
Okay.
I thank you guys for saying all that, because I got to tell you, at my age, I am tired. These young fellas keep me busy. And I think that part of what keeps me going is that at this stage, I can't stop, because I'm planting seeds that I may never see grow.
Mm-hmm.
But so my faith tells me that to plant the seeds, sow the seeds, and somewhere something's going to hit them immediately. It's going to hit them a month from now. And my prayer, and you guys can join me in a prayer, is that we find somebody to replace me, because I'm tired. Doing this for a while.
You have, but
I really like what Omar said. I like what everybody's saying. I think that the steps that we take, that King would want us to take, is to organize. I think that's the work of the NAACP. To organize and mobilize and to inform people and grow them up. And I think to that effort, how do you avoid the fatigue or whatever? Strengthen numbers. We need to build up the organizations like the NAACP. There's no reason why in my mind, why the NAACP in Austin and the NAACP in Peekskill doesn't have memberships 500 deep, minimum 500 deep. Strengthen numbers. Even if you don't make every meeting, we got a list, a roster that says we got 500 votes. We got 500 votes. All right. That says a lot. And we got to try to push that on not just people my age, but the younger people, and even the younger kids that I work with. I just try to encourage them to join the NAACP and be part of their youth branch. But I think that is the critical part that's missing to us trying to get something done. The strength of numbers. We can't do it alone. We definitely can't.
Everybody wants NAACP, but don't want to come to meetings. But then when something happens, we're the first person you call.
Mm-hmm.
Something happens, you see what happened in Peekskill with the young man, the police officer, what happened in Ossney. Everybody wants to then call Martin, call Jones, call Nikki. But it's like, hey, we need people power. One of the things I learned when I was an organizer was we may not always have the money to be a lobbyist, but we have the people, and the numbers do make a difference.
Absolutely.
I'll never forget my first couple months in Ossney. It was the issues before Omar Lopez was on the board, right? Where we were dealing with rent control and those kind of things. And I said, okay, we're going to bring my church to we're not going to have Bible study. We're going to have Bible study at City Hall. We're going to pack it out, and we're going to stay to this line, and then we're going to keep talking about this until the village board gets tired of hearing about it to make a difference, because votes do matter. People do have influence, and we have to remember, no matter how much you think that you don't matter, you are influential. Your voice speaks to somebody else and makes a difference in our community. Want to shift gears because today this conversation is sponsored by the Religious Affairs Committee, and so I have to have at least one church question in here just so I can continue to heat my clergy collar when I'm on first Sundays, right? And so one of the things that I'm always proud of, but even somewhat concerned about, is that when it's come to Black movements or Black organizations, historically they've always been started through or with the Black church. That whether it's been sororities, fraternities, whether it's been clubs, lodges, whatever it might be, we've always, whether you used our churches for fellowship halls, for meetings, for rally spaces, wherever it was, Black churches are at least the one real estate nationwide that Black folk can say, we own this property. Nobody has to ask us, can we meet here, because it is ours. And so because the civil rights movement has been deeply rooted in the Black church, movements today, unfortunately or not, Black Lives Matter is the first time we've had a movement that was not rooted in the Black church. The Black church has walked alongside of it, despite even maybe some philosophical questions about leadership with that. But we understood that most of all, what we had more in together than we had difference. So the question becomes this: does the church still, you think, have a meaningful role in liberation work? If so, what should be the role of the church today? The question probably should be asked to me, but I'm going to ask it to Nikki first, because her pastor texted me earlier and said, make sure you ask my members one question today.
Wow, Pastor Washington, I'm calling him out on the call. Absolutely, the church plays a part, always has and always will be, especially for me, right? That's the one place where folks can't tell us that we can't do something, right? As long as the pastor is on board. That's the one place you can't tell me when a couple years ago, Angela Davis was kicked out of North Rockland High School because the community didn't want her there because they said she is just so bad. And so where did I take it? To the church, right? And that's that one place that they can't say that we can't. The only thing that I feel like whatever is taught in the pulpit, especially about when it's talking about injustices and community, has to also follow on the outside. You can't tell the congregation one thing in the church that you say that you want us to do, and I don't see you out there, Pastor Jones, right? And so it has to be that transparency piece. It has to be the account. We also have to hold you accountable for the things that you say on the pulpit when it comes to our Black lives. When you're telling us that we have to talk to the community, that we need to bring souls into the church, right? That we also have to see you bringing souls to the church, right? Dr. King was also a preacher, and he was also in the streets. And so that too has to be followed, right? So I think that, yes, the church plays a big part in this movement. And I think that a lot of folks have moved themselves away from the church. for a number of reasons. But us as leaders, I think that we do have to bring our work into the church as much as possible, especially now,
Right.
because that's our only safe haven.
Right. Martin, I see you want to chime in?
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is one of those courageous conversations, and I'm going to be a little critical of some churches, not all churches, but I think some churches are not the place to go when you're advocating for Black people's rights. I think sometimes they're too easy to go along to get along and not want to raise those tough issues, not want to hit hard and say what it really is, not want to even say it's a Black thing. I think some churches, some church leaders have decided it's easier to go along and get along rather than challenge or simply ask the tough questions.
Mm-hmm.
We got to ask the tough questions of our politicians. I would say this is not just in the Black churches. This is also with some of our Black elected officials.
Agreed.
You have to be, if you ask a question, if I ask you a question and I disagree with you, doesn't mean I don't like you. I just need you to answer this question. I need you to deal with this, and we're cool in the game, because I'm going to agree with you on 50 other issues, but don't get mad at me when I ask you about one issue, and then now you're acting like a Republican, quite frankly. I think the church,
I agree with you, Mr. McDonald, because what I always say is not all skin folk is kinfolk, right?
Yeah,
And
that's true. And so I challenge the churches because that was our mainstay. That was our base. That's where things got done. That's where we really got things where we could really talk about Black issues. Right now, we're so busy talking about everybody else's issues that we forget our own.
That's right.
I got a problem with that.
I'm going to ask one of my allies, Rob, and not to call Rob out. Rob is a real ally. Like he's rock solid. And so, Rob, I know you like. I don't, Pastor. I've been in church before. I visit when I can. Just as someone who is not part of the Black community, but supports work liberation, how do you view the role of the Black church in this fight?
Well, I mean, thank you for that question. And everyone has said the fundamental role that the church has played in the movement. And one of the things that occurred to me in answer to your thoughtful questions, Pastor Sean, that you provided us before the session, is that something about Dr. King that maybe you said watered down or forgotten. And this isn't true of this group, obviously, because we're gathered here in a religious setting. But Dr. King's message was based in the gospel, and while that might not resonate with everyone who agrees with the goals of the movement, it does have the potential to really join us to segments of society that might not otherwise pay attention. So that, when you say that Jesus said, welcome the stranger, that's an argument for those who are sort of on the fence about what's going on with ICE, right? When you're trying to advocate for nonviolence, the admonition to love your enemy, which is probably about the hardest thing there is to do, that's a way to sort of show people how it is that faith plays a role in the movement that we're trying to build.
Yeah. And I appreciate you helped me out with that, because while yes, I see your Joyce, while yes, we're speaking about the Black church, but it's about a faith thing overall, because while King was there, also Rabbi Abraham Heschel was right there with him, marching at the same time. And so it's about faith, the fact that we may not all have the same way in terms of a Messiah when it comes down to the practical biblical aspects, whether you're Jewish, whether you are Muslim, whether you are Christian, even if you're agnostic, there are some things that we find about humanity and seeing the good in all persons, the imago Dei, the image of God in individuals, that I think, as you're saying, fuels our fight for justice, whether you are on the side of you're elected, or you're on this other side of those who are working with electeds or pushing electeds. with that. I think it's critical. Joyce, I saw your hand for you to share.
Yeah, I just want to historically talk about, you mentioned, why was it the Black church? It was the Black preacher. Because, I mean, we're going to be real and say something very uncomfortable. There are some Black people that are safe for others to listen to. And the Black preacher was very safe for people to listen to. They would listen to them. But when you have Black preachers that are not afraid and not subscribing to anything else, and the only thing they're worried about is their Lord and Jesus Christ, they're going to fight for their people and what is right. If they're not worried about politics, if they're not worried about getting likes and shares, but if they're worried about the mission and doing what God has instructed them to do, that's what they did. So even bringing back to your church, because my boyfriend, Reverend Henry Edward Doors, he had one of the village trustees, sorry, Omar, arrested in his time. They were not operating properly. It was discriminating against Black people for jobs, and the man hit him, and he had him arrested. He was calling everyone to task. So Black preachers historically have been the trusted person. Abraham Lincoln's talking to preachers. All the presidents are talking to Black preachers when they want to learn about the Black community. But the Black preachers have an honest on their life. You are the trusted ones by the other people. So there is something on your life that you have to be in line and not worried about popularity or being. And that's what Dr. King, he didn't care about being popular. Yeah. He had the mission. And that's why we lost him at 39, because he was not afraid.
Right. That's great. And I'll say this, if I can, not all Black preachers support Dr. King.
That's right.
There were some vehement differences in terms of how this struggle should have gone with civil rights of the 60s. I'm part of a denomination that really kind of ousted him, National Baptist. There was a difference between the thoughts with that. They're making some headway now, making some changes with that. But I do think it's critical for clergy and members to hold their clergy accountable, and clergy to not be so high lifted up that we aren't having our ear to the street, to know the concerns and issues. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had, whether they were educators, superintendents, whether it's been electeds, ask me questions representing the Black community. And I always make to say, I don't represent all Black folk in Ossipee, or Northern Westchester. I would not dare speak to that, because as a people, we are not monolithic. We don't all think the same all the time. But I can speak to what I hear from congregants, as well as friends of Star and friends of our community. So I do think it's important, no matter where you go to church or don't go to church, I think we all can agree that the role of faith plays a critical role, whether it is, as Rob, you're saying, to advocate policy, to pull on the heartstrings of individuals, because, you can't legislate people's hearts, but you can work on that. Or it is to then give people fuel to continue to fight the fight of faith, right? The idea that looking at the Exodus, Egyptians, that we serve a God of the who's on the side of the oppressed, that cares not about Pharaoh, but cares about the Egyptians being free. And so whether that is today with immigrants and Hispanics, whether that is with African Americans, whether that's with whoever it might be, knowing that God cares about the least and left out and those in the margins. I am curious, for our legislators, for our electeds, how do you think faith communities partner? Because people always talk about church and state, and so where is the thin line? Where do you look for partnership, or where can partnership be created, especially maybe not even created now in our communities?
I'll kick it off, Emiliana, and then I'd be happy to hear your thoughts as well, for sure. So there certainly is a long and important history in the separation of church and state in this country, and that really has to do with the kinds of decisions that we make in government being based on principles that apply to everyone, irrespective of what their faith is. At the same time, there's a deep history that we have with the faith community. There's a relationship between government and the faith community. And as an elected official specifically, it's really important because from a practical perspective, being able to speak to community leaders that regularly have contact with a broad swath of members of our community, that's really helpful to be able to get the word out about ways to get involved and what is happening. That all is true. But I think it's important to name the importance of the institution. I'm a millennial, and a lot of millennials especially have lost faith in institutions broadly. Churches, religious institutions, many different kinds, for a variety of reasons. But at the same time, there's a ton of value that is available in these institutions, and you're actually seeing a return of a lot of millennials that initially have moved away, returning to them. So what I'm seeing is at my church, All Saints Episcopal, our Reverend Jesse Tournier says the church budget isn't complete unless you have a line in the budget for bail money for members of our community that get arrested doing the work, and we're able to bail them out. To have that kind of institutional backing so that you're not alone, afraid, and tired is really important. I think that's one of the things that as people look to what are ways that they can get engaged and stay, have this be something that is sustainable, have it be mentally healthy, the church is incredibly helpful. I think another thing that I will quickly mention is the role of art in the church generally, but the Black church specifically, and music is incredibly important because a lot of what we're talking about is these are large, serious, and personal issues, but also there's a real important role that music has played throughout our history, and the Black church has really helped to create the soundtrack of freedom. And one of the things that government is not good for is music and art and that kind of thing. We really look for institutions like the Black church to be able to add the joy, add the movement that allows people to feel what they're doing in a different way. Emiliana?
Hold on real quick. Omar,
Okay.
Ray, you've messed me up now because my church budget meeting is like next week. So I know I'm going to hear 5 people say, where's the budget line item for the bail? So I'm going to tell them, I'm sending to all saints. No, I'm joking. But no, thank you for that. Emiliana, would you share?
Thank you so much. So right before you were kicking the question to me, I was typing in the chat. I think, religion and faith allow us to articulate the morality behind the causes that we fight for, whether we're fighting poverty or fighting for housing or fighting for resources for children so that they have paths to self-actualization, or we're fighting for immigrant rights. We can find the justification for why we're fighting for all these things in our faith, and in a way that adds so much more weight to the causes that we're fighting for, and in a way that brings us all a bit closer together around these causes. So I think that's one way and one role for religion to play in the struggles that we're fighting for. In terms of separation of church and state, right, we want to make sure that no one is ever discriminated against because of their religion, or very in the same way that someone does not get a preference in government because of their religion either, right? So those spaces we want to make sure are strictly scrutinized, but absolutely we see how basing our struggle in faith can help us bring people together more, and give them that deep reasoning for why we're doing this.
Oh, wonderful. I want to say this. We've been speaking about how faith fuels or pushes justice work. But we have to be honest that today, the world we live in today, many people see faith doing the opposite. One of the things that white evangelicals have done well is they have taken the model of Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Movement and have perverted it and used it in different ways. They took the morality fight and now have a same way where maybe Black pastors, other pastors who are justice and liberated minded will use their pulpit to preach liberation and justice from the gospel. There are others now who are using their pulpit to preach to preach Christian nationalism, to push for white nationalist supremacy. And so it is important, I believe, that as we talk about faith in institutions and faith in this work, that we distinguish between those who are those who preach or push the Jesus that I read and see about, who, as you said, Rob, cares about the least and left out, looking out. Have you gone to visit those who are behind prison walls? Have you cared for those who are sick? Care for those who are homeless? Or are you only looking out for yourself? And so there is this new, because we see many politicians, particularly our, nationally federal elected officers and politicians who are supposedly subscribing to a Christian evangelical movement, where that's not the same thing that we see now. We have a president who claims to be a Christian, but holds the Bible upside down and will totally move and gas people out of a public square so he can have a moment to say and talk about 2 Corinthians, right? And so I think it's important that as we talk about educating people, that we recognize that there is a difference, and that everybody's, unfortunately, say that everybody's Jesus is not the same, or people will use faith to get what they want. We've seen this with slavery. People justifying slavery, you misquoting Paul when he says, "Slaves, obey your masters." He was speaking to those who were employed to do right by and be a good worker for your supervisor. He was not advocating chattel slavery, but we have seen people use it. And honestly, we've seen this world go to war over faith all the time, from history, the Crusades, and all of that, even to today. We see what's happening in Israel, in the Middle East, and we see this still happening today. So I think it's important that we talk about it and be aware of what is happening. I want to continue to switch gears a little bit. We have not discussed a lot about economic justice and affordable housing, and those are critical issues that deal with us today, right? As we spoke earlier, Dr. King's final work centered around economic justice, the Poor People's Campaign, living wages, housing, poverty, things that are discussed now in terms of what is affordable. And so when we talk about living beyond the dream, requires, I believe, an economic focus and a lens. So the question is, what should communities like ours prioritize now as it relates to economic instability and inequality? I'm going to kick this to Nikki first, and then anybody else who may want to chime in.
No, I'm going to ask you to pass it to someone else first.
Okay.
And I'll chime.
All right. Omar, you know your head a lot. That you say you're ready?
No, absolutely. I'd be happy to. I'd be more than happy to. So housing is an incredibly complicated issue, but one of the great things about the way that it is designed in this country and in this state is that we have what's called home rule. And so typically when you think about the levels of government, you have local government, or you have your board of trustees show up every Wednesday at 7:30 doing the work. You have county level, state, federal. And as you go up, you think, okay, the higher the level, the more authority they have around aspects of our lives. And while that is true to an extent because they have access to more money, that isn't true when it comes to how land is used in a municipality. That's actually up to the local municipality. And so here in Ossining, we get to decide where are 1 or 2 family houses, or where should commercial areas be, or things like that, and all the differences and all the changes to that. That matters because if you want to build new housing, multifamily housing, affordable housing, whether it's at market rate or subsidized, it is completely dependent on your local laws. How easy or difficult is it to be able to build? What kind of support do you have from your local government? And that's the role that we try to play here, when we're moving forward with a project like we are at the old DPW site, 30 Water Street, here in the village of Ossining. It was this old plot of land that was unused. Basically, it's where the Department of Public Works used to put the leaves because there was nothing else that we could do with that land. We took that land and we said we want to create this space for affordable housing. Now, in order to do that, there's lots of concerns that come up. People are afraid about the impact to the environment, to parking, the schools, for taxes, for any number of different things. And what we have to do is to educate. And that's incredibly important because when you're looking at how do we increase the stock of affordable housing and housing, we need housing at every level, in every kind of housing, but particularly affordable housing. It's being able to address the concerns that people have. And one of the things that I'm most inspired by Dr. King is that not only was he a civil rights leader, he was also a faith leader. He understood the mechanics of administration. A lot of the work doesn't just happen in speeches, it happens in meetings, and it happens in doing what can be considered kind of boring work. You're showing up, doing a very a specific technical work, but that's how you are able to move ahead with getting the things that you want, like with housing.
No, appreciate that. Thank you. I think sharing some of the technical side of it. I know, Emiliana, that affordable housing is your baby in a way. Can you just share from a justice or a advocacy aspect, because people are struggling for housing, and we're wondering how does this work now? Because we look at redlining, we look at slumlords, we see in terms of are people being discriminated against because of their economic status, because of their race. You know, we see even Ossining, do we want to have 3-bedroom homes so that we can have children, or do we have enough space in the school system? You know, all these different things that play around with. So I'd love to hear your take on it.
Sure. So in county government, we are limited, as Trustee Lopez was mentioning, in how we can build because it's so locally controlled. Truly, the village and the town have more control than the county in building, but we have our own tools that we use to try to incentivize development. So the county will contribute and has contributed millions of dollars toward the sale of land in orders for new development that come in for it to be affordable housing rather than market rate housing, right? It does not help a community to tear down an old building and then build luxury apartments there. That helps no one. That just drives people out. And so ensuring that the county is contributing financially to the project to keep the apartments affordable is how we can help. In addition to apartments, the other thing that we're trying to push for is affordable condos, affordable ownership, so that families are able to build intergenerational wealth, right? And make it ownership a reality for so many people for whom they did not think it was possible. So that's some of the ways the county is looking for land to buy so that we can build housing there and to contribute financially to a project to allow those projects to be affordable. We're always looking for partners, and we've done a lot in the village of Ossining, and we continue to partner with Trustee Lopez and the mayor as well to find more projects to work on. This is a huge topic. I would also really, I'm so glad this is the piece that we're ending on. You know, one of the questions that you had submitted to us earlier is sort of what part of Dr. King's message has been watered down or ignored. And the piece about economic justice, right? The March on Washington was the March on Washington for jobs and freedom. Jobs and freedom, right? Dr. King understood well that like keeping a person unemployed was its own type of violence against that person, because a good paying job, a family sustaining job gives you dignity, gives you purpose and meaning, the ability to take care of yourself and your family, to be a meaningful contributor to your society and your community. All that comes from being able to find a good paying job, and it's government's responsibility to create that opportunity. So in addition to housing, I think economic development at large, right, to bring good paying jobs to the region, to support organized labor so that workers can unionize and they can demand more from their employers, right? Dr. King had very close relationship to organized labor. He would absolutely show up to every picket today. The nurses are on strike
Right.
in the Bronx today, and absolutely he would be there if he was still with us. So I'm confident that he would also be calling for taxing of the ultra wealthy, right? That got these huge tax breaks just this summer in the Build Back Better bill, and all on the backs of cutting healthcare services and food assistance. They cut those services just to give the millionaires and billionaires tax breaks. He would be morally outraged at that and would be calling us to call it out as well. So in addition to housing, I think there's all these other pieces as well. Having good paying jobs that are easily accessible, public transportation to help you get there, job training to make it accessible, and making the ultra wealthy pay their fair share so that we can build all these programs.
No, amazing. Going to go to Joyce, and then we're going to ask one more question before we close out.
Yeah, I just want to add on, excuse me, we have all the affordable housing, the possibilities of home ownership. But when you're dealing with people that have been marginalized for so long, the possibility of that seems impossible. We need education. If we're going to have these new buildings coming up for home ownership, we need to have financial planning courses. We need to, when we're pushing out the applications to become part of the lottery, there needs to be some education somewhere, maybe in the Black church. But we all need, we have been marginalized so long that some people don't even think that's a possibility for them. So we need to address that as well. We need to educate them on how they can take advantage of these opportunities, get ready. If the project is 3 years out, start planning now, get them education. So when that 3 years comes, they are ready to hit the button and apply and become homeowners. So we have to do two things at once. So we build it, that's great, you got it going, but now we have to educate people and get them to know that that's a possibility for them, when for so long it wasn't.
And Joyce, I appreciate your comment as well as everybody. Liliana, wonderful. I know we hosted a meeting recently, Joyce, because of the project that's happening on State Street, that residential area now from the Printex building being changed over. And so I know the question is always being asked and honestly among African Americans in particular about, are we being pushed out, whether it's moving down south, we can't afford to live in the area no more. And so I'm grateful that you all are talking about whether it's job education, whether it's housing education, because it is important. Education and training and access is critical for us to be economically where we want to be, and for our children's children to be there tomorrow, if that makes any sense. I want to change gears one thing, and we're going to be done in a few moments. It's been a wonderful conversation. Again, thank you all for what you've been sharing, even those who've been in the comments. Your comments have been fueling our discussion, and thank you for being actively engaged. I want to ask the questions. A sensitive question, but I think it's an important question. Civil rights movement of the 60s was not just it may have been fueled or started by Black communities, but again, it was not comprised only of Black people. We live in a world today where, particularly in our community, there seems to be a rift still in many ways between our Black and brown brothers and sisters, whether it's immigrants versus African American and police brutality issues, whatever it might be. And so these struggles continue to happen where we seem to fight each other instead of fighting those who are actually causing the issues that are facing our community. And so the question I have is, why do you think these tensions still exist between our communities? And what would real solidarity look like, not symbolic, but practical? Jaleesa, why don't you to take a stab at this one first, if you don't mind?
Sure. I do feel, as I mentioned before, a lot of it are outside groups fueling the separation between Black and brown. I also do think that it is easier to create chaos amongst the diaspora, right? Because many of the Black and brown population are the same population, just speaking different languages. And I think it's easier to separate it because if we come together, then there's more numbers to be able to cause change. I think ways to create more of a unity between the two are organizations, like after school programs for the youth, where you're not only in the classroom together, but you have commonalities after school. There are conversations like this, obviously, that really help because you're bringing forward ways to help us all civilly. Outside of government and education, when there are programs that are posting like Black and Brown, and not only Black or Brown, it really makes sure that we have the same struggles. And if we're working together, this is how we can make sure that we're ending the separation between the two. Language, now we live in an era where Google Translation, meta glasses, all these things will make the language barrier decrease. I did see a comment before when it was like, there is a major shift in the diverse community in Westchester County. We know that the population now in Ossining is 80% Hispanic. And you can see things that show that because of this, there might be some anger or separation between Black and Brown people. But I think when we have conversations and learning your neighbors, that we're very, very similar in many of the struggles. And a way to have practical steps are making sure that you go and say, okay, I'm aware that you have a problem with your housing unit, for example. This is something that we have too. Let's go to the NAACP and congregate together and making sure that we're making efforts as a group and not as individuals.
Great. Nikki, you're muted.
Yeah, you know, the most hated person in America to be is Black, and to be affiliated with is Black. And folks know that from coming over from wherever they come from, whether they're Latino, whether they're Asian, we're the most hated. And so it's known and it showed because of the way that TV is promoting us, the way that, I was going to say your president, the president is showing us, the way other politicians are showing us, and who the other politicians, sorry, politicians here, are actually catering towards, right? And we know that most of it is not someone that looks like me, who's Black, right? And we know that they're catering more to on the brown side because of the fact that, in my mind, they feel as if they can get things better from them. They can get a vote from them if they pass them along. I think one of the biggest things, and this is something that I've been trying to do in Rockland County, is to bridge that gap, right? Because our struggle is your struggle, right? Your hatred or your racism is off the backs of us, right? It's off the backs of Black folks. And so we're all trying to get the same thing. And so for me, it's about bridging that gap, using the NAACP to show that I'm here for you, right? That if there are issues that Latino folks have in school or with the government, that we're here to help and guide through that. That is something that hasn't happened in Rockland. I'll just use the NAACP, the NAACP branch, in a very long time. I'm really hesitant to say a lot of things. One, because it seems as if Ossining is doing some like great stuff, right? And I'm like, dang, I wish that Rockland could have this. Folks think that Rockland County is like this great big place with a lot of money. We don't have it. Our government hates Black and Brown folks, but the Brown folks tend to gear towards the politicians because they think that they can give them something when they don't. But I'm also hesitant to say some things because I don't want to rub people the wrong way in the beginning as I'm first coming in. But I do have a little rogue side to me. But I think that if folks only knew that we're all fighting for the same thing, that we would come together. If they only understood and knew that the things that are happening to them are based on the facts of what's happening to Black folks, we would all come together. Mm-hmm. That's with the Jewish folks as well, right? Folks who are Jewish. Things are happening to or has happened to Jewish folks because of Black folks, because of racism, because of slavery.
And I think we forget, people think the NAACP isn't just a Black organization. It is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And so there is an umbrella big enough for all walks of life to be a part of this association. that's doing this work and this justice work. Anybody else want to chime in?
I'll chime in quickly, Pastor Jones. Yeah. So the Ossining context specifically, I think, is important because not only do you have many different demographics, but particularly folks that are newer to the country, they're bringing very different cultural understandings of how community works and so forth. And so that happens in really granular ways. So when it comes to birthday parties, for example, one of the ways that if you have kids is a really common way for families to get to know each other. For many newer members to the community, they're not used to having a birthday party where you then invite many classmates and kinds of people that your kid knows, but maybe you don't know, and there's a discomfort there, and that's largely just because they have a different custom where it's in family, and the community is really a family community, maybe a church community, but it's really much more centered there. So for a place like Ossining, we really benefit from people that are the interpreters, the translators, the people that understand all of the different demographic groups and can help to build bridges. And you see that, for example, in 2017 when although ICE is something that is very much in the news now, it was less so in 2017 when Diego, a 19-year-old here in Ossining, was detained by ICE during the day of his prom. And you saw a real coming together of the community then, and that demonstrated that, hey, when things hit the fan, we're going to come together and we're going to help each other. And I think that during flashpoints like that, it's really important to do so. But the ability to do so is built upon day-to-day interactions and relationships that are supported by organizations like the NAACP, the faith community, the schools, local government, in order for people to get to know each other and understand, oh, okay, I that's a little bit different. If you're coming from a country like Ecuador, for example, the local police and the military is the same thing. And so when you see the local police, they are the military. So when someone is coming from Ecuador and coming and looking at our police department, they may say, well, they're part of the military, and I may get detained and sent to Ecuador if I do something wrong, whether I'm documented or not. That's an education thing, right? And who can help to build those bridges so that there's when that fear is out of the way, it opens up the ability for people then to do the higher level thing, like getting to know their neighbor.
Okay, let Mr. McDonald, it'll be the last comment for this as we about to close out. Go ahead, Brother Martin.
Thank you. Appreciating everything that's been said. Again, I think this is a tough conversation. And I have to share with you a perspective that might not be as popular here. But there is a resentment. There is a breakdown in communication within the Black and some of the Latino community. There are those in the Latin community that identify with their African culture. But we have to know that there are Latin countries that have light-skinned Latinos and dark-skinned Latinos, and they don't like each other. They do not get along. So let's not pretend that they're not bringing some of that baggage here with them. I can tell you that I've experienced some things being around some Latin people. And I listen, I'm 65. My spider senses are accurate. I know when somebody is doing something or shading me or treating me less than because I'm a Black man. I don't need to prove it. I know it. And I'm not the only one with this story. I know countless people in this community that feel like, okay, you're here. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I support you. I hear you. Let's communicate. Let's translate things into Spanish so that you understand I got that, and we do that. But then don't start treating me like the Klan. Don't start looking down at some of our elders and disrespecting them in ways that no. That's not. We're not going to bridge a gap that way. But I suspect that comes from their culture and their baggage because they got the color issue there. You got dark-skinned Dominicans that don't like the other Dominicans, and vice versa. That's all over the globe. It's nothing new. But the question is, I think the question is, how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah.
How do we mend that? How do we work on it? I say we do it one step at a time, I guess. You know, I run a program for Black male students, Black and brown male students. black and brown male students. The kids that it's an open door. You can come in. But I know that the kids that are from Ecuador, Guatemala, Argentina, they can't connect with me. They don't, but the kids that are Puerto Ricans, the kids that are Colombian, the kid that some Dominicans, they'll come in. So what do I do? Do I have to go out of my way to reach the kids that don't feel a natural connection, that it's not organic for them to come in to be a part of my program? I say, no, I can't do that. If you want to be a part of my program, you got to come in, because I'm not going to change what I'm doing to attract you when I'm just here and I'm welcome. I'm going to work with those that I have. We have to work with the ones that we have, and the ones that are probably the most needy are, again, the minority in Peekskill, Austin, and in some of the other school districts are the black kids. Right? I have to work with them, and anybody that wants to identify with black, that's where I'm at. And I just have to be honest about it.
And I think what you spoke to, Martin, was colorism. I know that Nikki mentioned in the chat, and I was thinking as well. Colorism is an issue globally. It happens within black communities. The paper bag test. You know what I'm saying? And so this is the issue of a ism, whether again racism, sexism, ageism, that still is taking place, that is hurting our communities in many ways. I think a solution to it, we don't have the answer today, but I think Dr. Jaleesa put in the comment about the fact about community and working together, finding what we have more in common than what we have against, in separation, and building upon those things together. But as Omar said earlier, education, listening, understanding cultural aspects are very real. I was talking to somebody yesterday, this week, about cultural differences in terms of I'm from the Midwest. So by 18, 19, getting out of the house and having your own place was normative. But living in New York, and those maybe from other Hispanic countries and cultures, being an adult 40 or 30, living in the same house with your mom and dad and grandparents is normative behavior. It's not just economic. It is, we have multiple generations in the same place together. And so it is learning and being open to learning, right? Realizing I don't have all the answers. And once you learn, the phrase, when you know better, you do better. I think we build upon that together, we can move forward. And that's what Dr. King was talking about, the whole idea about beloved community, about loving each other, about saying, hey, we are fighting for the same scraps. Let's not fight each other. Let's build together. Let's not have this ant mentality that I'm going to pull you down so I can push myself up. As we close out, it's been a wonderful conversation. To our panelists, thank you. To those who've been in the comments, who've been watching online, thank you so very much. Before we close, I want to have every panelist to answer one quick question, just one line. But before I do that, I want to thank the committee, because it's not a committee of one. There were multiple people who serve on our Religious Affairs Committee who you would have seen if we had been in person on tonight, but they have been playing behind the scenes even tonight in the chat within our own platform and beyond. And so thank you all to all of those, to Harry Campbell, our branch president. Thank you for your trust in me. To our executive committee, to our regional director, Nikki Hines, thank you for allowing us to do this. And when we asked you on the spot to be a part of the panel, you did not hesitate. Thank you to all of our panelists again. Last question we close out tonight is this. Again, the theme for this is Beyond the Dream. So in one line, Live Beyond the Dream requires us to do what this year, personally or collectively? We're going to live beyond the dream. What do we need to do from your perspective? One thing, one line, personally or collectively. We're going to start with our Deputy Mayor Lopez.
That's right. I think that the inspiration requires perspiration. Show up to one meeting locally of anything, government, nonprofit, religious institution, but show up in person.
Wonderful. Mr. McDonald.
I got to think on that. That's a tough one. One thing,
just
one line.
One thing.
Go to somebody else.
All right. No, can't go to somebody else. Come on, go. There's one thing. Just one thing. Live beyond the dream. One thing.
Live beyond the dream. Fight against poverty.
Okay.
Fight against poverty. Yeah.
Historian Joyce Sherrock Cole.
Use your gifts to help move us forward.
Use your gifts. All right. County Legislator Miliana Ulay. I didn't get that right. Did I say that right?
It's okay.
No, it's not.
It's all right.
Ula. I'm getting it right.
Doing
Ula.
great.
I apologize.
Thank you. Solidarity. Find other groups that are being targeted, and let's show each other solidarity. We are all so much stronger if we join forces.
Wonderful. All right. Nikki Hines.
I would say for us to come together, be unified as one, and also for us to hold our elected officials accountable, for us to vote, for us to not be afraid to speak out, and also to when we are putting things on Facebook and Instagram, that we have the correct information when we're putting it out there. But we need to be together and fight the good fight. It's only going to get harder from here.
Thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Jaleesa.
I will go where the people are that need our help, and I will continue the fight to close the education and wealth gap.
Okay. Again, it's been a wonderful panel, wonderful discussion. Thank you all so much. Want to remind persons about joining and being active. We have a general meeting on this Thursday, and so you can join NAACP, be a part of it there. You can inbox us, even what we're watching online right now for more information about where the meeting is going to be, what the Zoom link will be, so you can be part of the association that's doing this work. We continue to be the biggest and baddest who are fighting for the fight of justice. And so we need not just you in the chat, but we need your membership and your support to do this. Our panelists, thank you so very much. Happy Dr. King Day. Remember, Dr. King's Day is not a day off. It's a day of service. Take care. Have a great night. Be blessed.